You did not find this message by chance. You were led here by something quieter than thought, subtler than intention, the same unseen current that moves planets through their orbits and breathes galaxies into being. You have felt it before, haven't you? That hum beneath the noise of life, the faint signal that says, there's more to this than meets the eye. You've been taught that transformation must be visible, that change requires motion, that growth needs witnesses. Yet the most powerful revolutions unfold in complete silence. They do not announce themselves. They rewire your reality from the inside out. The world may not notice, but your molecules do. Your field of awareness rearranges itself long before evidence appears. Imagine this: for years you've lived inside a familiar room, certain that its walls define your limits. Then one quiet moment, your hand brushes a section of the wall and it gives way. A hidden door. It was there all along. No one sees you step through, but from that moment forward, everything changes. This is how the quantum shift arrives. Without fanfare, without proof. Like particles collapsing into form, silently obeying the observer's coherence. The transformation does not roar. It flickers, stabilizes, and becomes the new foundation of your being. And here's the secret few ever realize: the silence you fear is not emptiness. It is construction. The quiet is the architecture of new worlds, forming beneath awareness. Every breath you take inside that stillness sends instructions into the field, and the field listens. So as you stand in this pause between who you were and who you are becoming, know this: you don't need to chase change anymore. You are already radiating it. The hidden door has opened, the shift has begun, and it begins right now in the soundless space within you. The hidden door doesn't announce itself. It waits silent, patient, disguised as ordinary life. One day, without any ceremony, your awareness grazes against it. Something subtle shifts. The air inside you changes texture. A faint recognition flickers. There's more here than I thought. That moment, quiet as breath, is the beginning of all true transformation. You may not notice it right away. Most people don't. We've been trained to equate power with noise, to believe change must be witnessed to be real. So we chase symbols, the job title, the milestone, the public declaration. Yet what if the deepest reorientations happen in secret, invisible even to ourselves until much later? Imagine living your entire life inside a familiar room. You know every corner, every echo. You believe the walls define your limits. Then, one day, your hand brushes a panel that shouldn't move, and it does. Behind it lies a hallway that was always there, just unseen. That's what happens when consciousness evolves, not a demolition, but a discovery. And yet the modern mind distrusts quiet discovery. It wants evidence, charts, confirmation, but both physics and mysticism whisper the same thing: the real work of creation happens in stillness. In the subatomic world, particles don't shout as they become. They flicker, collapse, appear. The transformation from potential to form is instantaneous and soundless. The universe itself updates through silence. Neuroscience mirrors this elegant secrecy. When your brain learns a new pattern, it doesn't broadcast a fireworks display. It rewires quietly, neuron by neuron, spark by spark. These microcurrents, firing in new configurations, are the biological echo of awakening. They're the unseen architecture of your next reality. Most never witness this process, yet it's happening constantly beneath every moment of self-awareness, beneath every choice that feels different from yesterday's. Mystics from every age knew this truth long before science found its language. They spoke of inner temples, hidden chambers, thresholds that opened only through still attention. Be still and know. They said not as metaphor, but as instruction. For in the hush of presence, You access the coordinates of new dimensions of being. So consider the moments you've dismissed as insignificant, a sudden calm during chaos, a thought that no longer hooks your emotions, a quiet decision to stop fighting what you cannot control. These aren't coincidences, they are hinges turning. The door inside you is opening, and reality is rearranging itself to match the frequency of your new understanding. Here's the paradox, because the external world is slower than the internal. You might feel nothing changing at first. It's like editing the code of a program while the screen still shows the old display. But the command has already been entered. The universe is compiling your new alignment. Soon, the refresh will occur. And what causes this refresh isn't effort, it's coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and body begin to hum in the same direction, reality listens. The field doesn't respond to words or volume, it responds to stability. That's why breakthroughs often hide inside fatigue, stillness, even boredom. The system is recalibrating. You may not trust that silence yet. You might crave signs that something's happening, but the proof is always delayed, because reality updates in sequence: inner first, outer second. When you stop shouting your transformation and simply live it, the field mirrors it back without resistance. Think of the hidden door as a state of permission. The moment you stop pushing against the walls of what was, you allow the threshold to reveal itself. And when it opens, you won't hear trumpets. You'll feel gravity shift, a quiet pull toward a version of yourself who no longer doubts the unseen. Right now, even as you breathe, subtle threads of coherence are forming. Neural sparks are joining hands across old gaps. Possibility is aligning into pattern. You can't hear it, but the door is already moving. That's the invitation of the hidden transformation: to trust what you cannot yet see, to move without applause, to walk silently through the doorway that was always waiting for you. The doorway has opened, though few can tell. Yet as soon as it does, the mind wants to announce it, to name, prove, and display it. That impulse, innocent as it seems, is the very static that closes the channel again, because the quantum shift is fragile at first, like a new signal searching for a clean frequency. And every word of performance, every gesture of needing to be seen, becomes interference in the field. Here's the paradox: the louder you try to prove that change is happening, the less stable it becomes. The need for recognition scatters coherence like pebbles tossed into still water. Your energy disperses outward instead of anchoring inward. That's why so many transformations collapse before they mature. They are spoken too soon. Think about it: society rewards visibility. We're taught to broadcast every step, every decision, every new belief. But the quantum field doesn't operate on applause. It operates on resonance. When you externalize your internal process too early, you're effectively sending mixed signals, one to yourself, one to the audience. The result is interference, not integration. Neuroscience can explain this with brutal simplicity. Each time you tell someone about your new goal, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical of satisfaction. That release tricks the nervous system into believing the task is already complete. Motivation fades. Progress slows. What could have been quiet momentum becomes dissipated noise. And yet the ancient mystics knew this long before neurotransmitters had a name. They called it guarding the flame. In the early stages of transformation, your inner fire is delicate, easily extinguished by the wind of other people's opinions. So they taught the art of silence, not as secrecy, but as protection. A field stabilizing itself before expression. Imagine the quantum field as a vast, responsive mirror. Every thought, emotion, and posture you hold sends ripples across its surface. When your signal is steady, the mirror reflects clearly. But when you keep changing direction, speaking too soon, seeking validation, the reflection fractures. You get static instead of symmetry. You may have noticed this in your own life, the frustration of declaring a goal, feeling powerful for a moment, then watching the energy evaporate days later. That's the interference pattern in motion. The noise of performance displaces the precision of alignment. The field can't lock onto a moving signal. Here's where the science meets the spirit. Coherence is born in containment. When waves reinforce each other through harmony, they amplify. When they collide out of sync, they cancel out. Every public declaration made before internal stabilization is an out-of-sync wave. The universe doesn't punish it, it simply cannot decode it. So consider the possibility that the craving for recognition is not confidence, but fear, the mind's attempt to outsource certainty. When you need others to confirm your transformation, you are signaling doubt to the field. And the field, ever faithful to your frequency, mirrors that uncertainty right back. But silence communicates trust. Silence says, "I believe," before the evidence. It is the highest form of coherence because it aligns thought, feeling, and action under one invisible roof. This is why true masters of reality move quietly. Their power doesn't require permission. Their shift does not need witnesses. You may not like this truth because it defies how you were raised to measure progress. Yet the science of resonance leaves no room for negotiation. Stability before sound. Form follows focus. Until your energy is coherent, every attempt to share disperses it. Let's interrupt the pattern here. What if you stopped proving and started preserving? What if you treated your transformation like a seed, planted deep where no eye can see? A seed does not shout to the soil that it is growing. It becomes patiently. And when it breaks the surface, its existence is undeniable. The universe moves the same way. Every quiet moment of coherence is a seed buried in the quantum field. Give it time, and it reorganizes your entire landscape. But pull it out daily to show your progress, and you interrupt its design. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause, breathe, let the silence hold your becoming. Because when the noise stops, reality has space to rearrange itself around the truth you no longer need to prove. When noise dissolves, what remains is precision. Beneath every word you've silenced, something intricate begins to hum, not loud, but exact. It is the circuitry of transformation assembling itself. You can almost feel it under your skin, can't you? The faint pulse of new possibilities aligning with your biology. This is where science meets spirit in the silent construction of change. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's quiet genius for rewiring itself. Each time you entertain a new thought, neurons send out slender filaments like explorers reaching into darkness. If the thought repeats, those filaments connect, forming a bridge. Over time, these bridges become highways, new neural circuits that redefine how you think, feel, and act. But the process is invisible. There are no fireworks, no ceremony. The rewiring happens beneath the threshold of awareness, in the dim space where electrical whispers decide who you will become next. And that invisibility confuses the ego, because when it cannot see the progress, it doubts the change. Consider what this means. Every new belief you embody, every emotion you choose to sustain, is sculpting a new neural landscape. But if you rush to prove or measure it too soon, you interrupt the sculptor mid-stroke. The clay hardens before the form emerges. Silence is not inaction, it's incubation. And here's the paradox: the same laws apply in the quantum field. In physics, a particle exists in a state of superposition, many possibilities suspended at once, until observation collapses it into form. But that collapse is not dramatic. It is instantaneous and silent. The universe does not thunder when it becomes something new. It simply is. What happens inside your mind follows this same Same principle. When your thoughts, emotions, and body reach coherence, that subtle alignment where inner friction disappears, the potential of who you can become collapses into reality. Instantly. No sound, no announcement, just a quiet reordering of probability. You can feel it when it happens. It's not euphoria or fireworks. It's a deep, grounded calm, a sense that reality has finally stopped arguing with you. That sensation is coherence, the body and brain resonating in unison, sending a clean signal into the field. From that moment, the external world has no choice but to reorganize. Modern instruments can even detect this. Heart rate monitors show that when emotion and thought harmonize, the heart's electromagnetic field becomes smoother, more ordered. That signal extends several feet beyond the body, influencing the space around you. To the mystic, this is aura. To the physicist, it's magnetism. To you, it's proof that silence is not empty, it is formative. But here's where the mind struggles. It wants transformation to feel grand, heroic, cinematic. It doesn't trust the quiet flicker of subtle change. So it keeps checking, measuring, doubting, like digging up seeds to see if they've sprouted. And in that act of impatience, coherence collapses again. The field pauses, waiting for you to stabilize. Imagine instead that you trusted the stillness, that you allowed the rewiring to complete itself in darkness. The seed does not question the soil. The neuron does not demand applause for firing differently. The wave does not ask the observer for validation. All of them simply follow their nature to become more ordered over time. So the invitation here is radical simplicity. Stop looking for signs that you are changing, and let the silence confirm it for you. Each time you rest in that trust, you deepen the circuit. Each time you allow the quiet to work without your interference, the field gains clarity. This is why the deepest transformation feels ordinary while it's happening, because your nervous system, for the first time, is no longer in resistance. You have entered alignment, and alignment feels like peace. But peace, to an addicted mind, feels like nothing. Don't confuse calm with emptiness. Calm is the sound of coherence stabilizing. So when you notice that nothing seems to be happening, pause and smile, that nothing is everything rearranging itself. The subtle change is already rewriting the code beneath your perception, preparing the external world to match the inner symmetry you've finally allowed. The silence that builds coherence eventually reaches a deeper layer identity. By the time your brain begins rewiring, your sense of self has already started to mutate. You may not recognize it yet, but the architecture of who you are is dissolving and reforming beneath perception. And here's where the transformation gets delicate. Identity is the true engine of reality creation. You don't attract what you want. You magnetize what you are. The field reads not your intentions, but your embodiment. Every moment, it mirrors back your state of being like an infinite hall of mirrors, translating your coherence into circumstance. But identity doesn't shift through affirmation or declaration. It shifts through silent assumption. Imagine slipping into a new body, not physically, but psychologically. You begin to feel like the person who already lives the reality you once desired. The neural network that supports the old identity starts losing its signal strength. New circuits take over. It's not immediate, but it's irreversible once coherence stabilizes. Neuroscientists might describe this as long-term potentiation neurons that fire together, wire together, until they form dominant highways of perception. Spiritual teachers call it embodiment. Both point to the same truth when your biology begins living as the new self. The field updates automatically. The shift is biochemical and metaphysical, one motion mirrored in two languages. And yet this early stage is fragile. because the moment you talk about it too soon, you pull the new identity back into the old one's gravitational field. Explaining your transformation to others forces you to translate it into the vocabulary of who you used to be. That act alone reactivates dormant circuits, confusing the signal. The field, ever responsive, mirrors that confusion. Here's the paradox: identity work cannot be performed. You cannot announce it without weakening it. True becoming happens beneath language, like a seed cracking underground. The new self forms in total darkness. Only later does the surface world catch up and call it change. Think about a time you outgrew something without trying: a habit, a relationship, a version of yourself. One day, the pull simply vanished. No struggle, no announcement, just absence. That's what identity recalibration feels like: the quiet erasure of the old pattern from your nervous system. You didn't quit, you evolved psychologically. This process is measurable. When your self-concept updates, the brain's predictive coding adjusts. It stops anticipating the past and begins expecting a new reality. Behavior shifts effortlessly because the blueprint beneath it has changed. The non-smoker no longer resists cigarettes. They simply no longer identify as someone who smokes. Action follows identity as shadow follows light. So ask yourself, who are you rehearsing every day? Because repetition isn't just habit, it's self-suggestion. Every emotional response, every thought pattern, every internal story either reinforces the old circuitry or strengthens the new. You are always broadcasting a frequency, and the universe never stops listening. Let's interrupt the pattern here. What if you stopped trying to change behavior and focused solely on shifting identity? Instead of saying, "I'm trying to be calm," you quietly assume, "I am someone whose natural state is peace." At first, your environment may not match that inner declaration, but the field doesn't follow instantly. It follows inevitably, and when it does, the change appears sudden to everyone else. They'll ask what you did differently. You'll smile, knowing that nothing external caused it. You simply stopped being the old version of yourself. That's the silent revolution, the one no one sees until it's already complete. Identity is the ultimate quantum code. It collapses potential into form with every breath. The moment you stop negotiating with your former self, the field receives a clear command: update reality to match the new observer. From there, life reorganizes itself naturally. People shift, opportunities align, probabilities collapse into coherence. You won't need to prove anything. You won't need to explain, because the true shift in identity does not announce itself. It emanates. It doesn't argue. It arranges. That is the hidden physics of becoming when you silently stabilize a new sense of self. The universe has no choice but to conform. The moment your identity stabilizes, something curious begins to happen. Repetition transforms into ritual. What you once did to practice coherence now becomes sacred, not because of complexity, but because of constancy. The ordinary motions of your day, your breathing, your thoughts before sleep, the way you hold silence turn into the architecture that sustains the shift. And yet ritual has been misunderstood. People think it requires incense, chanting, ceremony, but the most powerful rituals are invisible. They unfold in the quiet intimacy between you and the field, in the rhythm of your heartbeat aligning with your thoughts, in the stillness before dawn when no one is watching. The invisible becomes the engine of reality's reorganization. Neuroscience affirms what the mystics always intuited. The body learns through repetition. Each time you breathe deeply into coherence, inhaling trust, exhaling tension, you recondition your nervous system. Those consistent micro-signals become a stable electromagnetic broadcast that tells the field, "This is who I am now." It's measurable. 2. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute discovered that when the heart's rhythm becomes smooth and coherent, brain waves synchronize with it. This physiological harmony expands the electromagnetic field surrounding the body, influencing the environment itself. To science, it's resonance; to mystics, it's prayer; to you, it's proof that silence has circuitry. But here's the paradox: the ego distrusts simplicity. It wants grand gestures, instant results, external proof. So it seeks louder rituals, affirmations shouted, visions, boards filled, plans made public. Yet every layer of noise dilutes the coherence you're trying to build. True power doesn't need display, it needs stability. Consider the humble breath. Each inhale brings in the unseen intelligence of the field. Each exhale releases resistance. If you extend your exhale slightly longer than your inhale, your nervous system shifts from survival to creation. Stress hormones drop, the body softens. You've just reprogrammed your biology quietly, invisibly, within minutes. Imagine performing this silent ritual each night before sleep. You lie down, close your eyes, and breathe yourself into the identity of the one who already lives your chosen reality. You don't visualize, you embody. You feel it as truth, not wish. The subconscious, ever faithful, receives that signal and carries it through the night, stitching your new identity into the neural fabric of who you are. Now follow this thread. These nightly rituals may seem insignificant, but over time they become the gravitational center of your reality. Each repetition strengthens the coherence. Each moment of trust compounds the magnetism. The field begins reorganizing around the signal you send in silence. Think of these rituals as tuning forks. When struck consistently, they teach your entire system to vibrate at the same frequency. Miss a few notes, and the resonance weakens. Stay steady, and the field amplifies it. You're not forcing change anymore. You're maintaining frequency long enough for matter to catch up. Let's interrupt the pattern here. What if the most powerful ritual isn't something you add, but something you stop? What if transformation accelerates not by stacking more affirmations, but by releasing static, by subtracting worry, analysis, comparison? The field isn't waiting for more input, it's waiting for clarity, and clarity is born from subtraction. When you strip away the noise, what remains is coherence. The signal strengthens, the world aligns. You don't need candles or mantras. You need sincerity. The decision to show up for your stillness as faithfully as you once showed up for your striving. So begin small. One breath held in awareness. One night of peace before sleep. One moment each morning where you sit and feel your existence as enough. These quiet rituals are not symbolic gestures. They are biological commands. The field listens. Your cells listen. Reality adjusts accordingly. Because in truth, every ritual of silence is a language of instruction, a code written not in words, but in frequency. When you perform it sincerely, the universe translates that vibration into circumstance. And by the time anyone notices, it will be too late to call it coincidence. The shift will already be real. The silent rituals you've begun do not stay contained. Every breath, every calm heartbeat, every moment of inward coherence sends a pulse beyond the boundary of your body. You may think it ends at your skin, but physics disagrees. The field around you is not metaphor. It is measurable magnetism, expanding and informing everything it touches. What begins in stillness becomes influence. Imagine dropping a single pebble into a still lake. The surface quivers. Concentric ripples move outward, soft but unstoppable. That's what coherence does. It radiates through the quantum medium, carrying the imprint of your state across invisible space. Those who are near you begin to feel it. They may not understand why, but their breathing slows. Their tone softens. Their mind quiets. Resonance has begun. Science gives us language for this. The biologist Rupert Sheldrake spoke of morphic fields, patterns of energy and information that influence behavior across distance. Quantum physics echoes the same principle. Through entanglement, two systems, once connected, continue to affect each other instantaneously. Even when separated, in both views, the signal of coherence cannot be contained by geography. And yet many dismiss this as coincidence. They forget that the human nervous system is an instrument tuned by resonance. When your inner state stabilizes, those around you unconsciously match it. Mirror neurons fire, cortisol levels drop. Harmony spreads through unspoken transmission. You don't change others by argument. You change them by vibration. Think of the times you've entered a room heavy with tension. Before anyone spoke, you felt it. That is the collective field in dissonance. Now remember walking into the presence of someone deeply calm. Their peace rearranged the air itself. You felt safer without knowing why. This is the ripple effect of coherence, subtle but absolute. Here's the paradox: the most profound influence is the one no one can trace back to you. The ripple moves quietly, without identity, without ownership. It's not manipulation, it's participation. The tuning fork doesn't force the other fork to sing. It merely vibrates clearly enough that the other remembers its own note. This means that as you refine your inner alignment, you are also editing the environment itself. Families recalibrate, teams function differently, strangers treat you with unearned kindness. It seems miraculous, but it's simply resonance reorganizing collective probability. The universe doesn't separate self from system. It moves as one integrated field of correspondence. You may wonder, if this ripple is real, why do some transformations seem to vanish before reaching the shore? The answer lies in consistency. One burst of coherence is a ripple. Sustained coherence is a wave. A ripple fades. A wave reshapes the coastline. The field requires duration, not volume. Every moment you return to alignment, you strengthen the current that carries change outward. Let's interrupt the pattern here. Think of those who seem to manifest overnight success. What you witness is not sudden magic. It's the moment when months or years of silent ripples accumulate into an undeniable wave. The field, having been whispered to long enough, finally answers loudly. What looks abrupt is the visible crest of a long invisible tide. There's another layer. The ripple doesn't just influence others. It educates your own future. Each coherent signal leaves an imprint in the field that you later walk back into as circumstance. The peace you emit today becomes the opportunity that meets you tomorrow. Cause and effect dissolve into one continuous feedback loop. So next time you sit in silence, remember this. You are not merely calming yourself. You are composing the frequency of the world around you. The field listens to the music you play. The stiller the note, the further it travels. And by the time the wave returns to you as evidence in chance meetings, effortless outcomes, or synchronicities too precise to deny, you will recognize it for what it truly is, the echo of your own coherence. Finally reaching the shore, every ripple begins with intention, but it becomes a wave only through consistency. The quantum field, like any intelligent system, doesn't respond to bursts of energy. It responds to patterns. It listens for stability. A single flash of alignment may sparkle in the water, but without repetition, it fades before reaching the shore. Coherence requires rhythm, not drama. And yet humans crave novelty. We want transformation to surprise us, to feel like lightning striking. But lightning is momentary. It illuminates the landscape, then leaves us in darkness again. The current that truly reshapes the terrain is slower, quieter, persistent, like water carving stone. That is the work of consistency, a devotion to stillness so steady that the universe begins to trust your signal. Think of your rituals as frequencies. Every morning breath, every evening reflection, every act of inner alignment becomes a note in a repeating melody over days and weeks. That melody writes itself into the fabric of the field. The repetition is not monotony, it's mastery. Each recurrence tells reality. This vibration is not a wish. It is who I am now. Neuroscience gives this truth form. When neurons fire together repeatedly, they wire together, creating reinforced pathways that become the mind's default setting. At first, these circuits are fragile, but repetition strengthens them, much like muscles trained through gentle resistance. The more consistent the practice, the more automatic the coherence becomes. Eventually, alignment is no longer something you do, it's who you are. Here's the paradox: people abandon stillness precisely when it starts working. The early signs of transformation are subtle, fewer emotional spikes, more neutrality, deeper calm. To an ego addicted to intensity, this can feel like boredom, not progress. But boredom is often the signal that chaos is losing its grip. It's the sound of coherence stabilizing. Consider a musician tuning an instrument. At first, every adjustment feels uncertain, but once the strings settle, the sound becomes pure. You wouldn't stop playing just because the tuning feels uneventful. You'd recognize that silence between notes as the sign of readiness. The same is true for your frequency. The quieter your inner noise, the sharper your resonance with the field. Let's interrupt the pattern here. What if patience itself is the highest form of power? The field doesn't need constant stimulation, it needs continuity. Every time you return to coherence after distraction, you reinforce your authority as creator. Every moment of renewed calm is a vote cast for your new identity. Nothing is wasted. Think of the ocean's tides. Each wave alone seems small, almost forgettable. Yet over time, they sculpt entire coastlines. That's how the field responds to consistency. It rearranges probability around the signal that refuses to waver. You become the gravitational center of your reality, not through intensity, but through repetition. Spiritual traditions echo this. Daily prayer, meditation, breath. These weren't meant as duties, they were technologies of coherence. When practiced rhythmically, they kept the human system attuned to the larger order. In physics, this same principle is called resonance entrainment. Weaker oscillations synchronize with stronger ones until both move as one. Your consistent alignment makes you the stronger oscillator, the rhythm that reality begins to follow. You may not see immediate fireworks, but beneath the surface, the wave is gathering force. The delay between signal and evidence is not absence, it's incubation. Reality needs time to reorganize its lattice around your new frequency. When it finally appears, it looks like a miracle. It isn't. It's math. So here is your quiet assignment. Keep showing up. When the mind doubts, breathe. When the energy dips, breathe again. Consistency is not perfection, it's persistence. Every return to coherence compounds the signal's strength until it becomes unstoppable. Because once the wave is strong enough, it no longer needs your conscious attention. It moves on its own, reshaping outcomes, guiding chance, whispering to the field. By then, you'll understand what the mystics meant when they said, faith is frequency sustained. The longer you hold the note, the further it travels, and eventually the universe starts to sing along. By now, the wave of coherence has expanded far beyond you, but you may notice something unexpected. The world begins to mirror your inner state back to you. not through mystical coincidence, but through the subtle mechanics of resonance and reflection. Every person you meet, every reaction you provoke, becomes a diagnostic image of your frequency. The field has turned relational, and yet most people misinterpret this. They think the behavior of others reveals who those people are. In truth, it's often showing you who you've become. Your relationships act as tuning mirrors, amplifying whichever notes of coherence or chaos you still hold. The ones you've harmonized with respond peacefully. The ones you've outgrown create friction. It's not punishment, it's physics. This is where mirror neurons come in. These tiny clusters in your brain fire both when you act and when you observe someone else acting. It's empathy wired as biology, but on an energetic level, it means that your internal coherence can recalibrate another nervous system without words. Your calm becomes contagious. Your stillness teaches by example. When you stabilize, you emit instruction not verbally, but vibrationally. Imagine walking into a tense conversation carrying true inner peace. You don't force it. You don't try to calm others. You simply are calm. Within minutes, voices lower. The tone softens. The atmosphere shifts. You've altered probability through presence. Nothing mystical about it, just coherence, asserting dominance over dissonance. Here's the paradox. The same mechanism also reveals your unfinished lessons. If someone's chaos keeps hooking you, it's not proof they're wrong. It's proof your field still resonates with that frequency. The universe isn't scolding you. It's showing you the exact pattern that's ready to be released. Every trigger is an echo, asking, are you ready to vibrate differently now? You can treat these moments as sacred diagnostics. When you catch yourself judging, tighten your attention and ask, what is this reflecting? When you feel resistance rise, don't fight it, study it. Reality is never punishing you. It's instructing you in your own coherence. And here's where compassion becomes technology. When you stay anchored in coherence even as others oscillate, your steadiness invites their nervous systems into harmony. You don't need to fix them. You just hold your frequency long enough for theirs to remember balance. This is how families heal without endless conversation, how teams shift without new management, how love becomes evolutionary. Think about the last time you were around someone who radiated peace. You felt lighter, didn't you? That's not metaphor, it's entrainment. Their field pulled yours into coherence. Now consider the opposite, a person who always stirs anxiety. If you react, you've tuned to their chaos. If you stay still, your calm eventually tunes them instead. This is why personal mastery precedes collective change. The world follows the one who holds their center. Let's interrupt the pattern here. Imagine humanity as a vast hall of mirrors, each person reflecting frequencies into others. One coherent individual can recalibrate dozens simply by presence. That's how revolutions of consciousness begin quietly. One nervous system at a time, your inner silence becomes social influence, rippling across invisible networks of empathy and perception. But don't romanticize it. The mirror also tests endurance. People may resist your shift because it exposes their own incoherence. Relationships once built on shared limitation might dissolve. Let them. You are not losing connection. You are refining it. The field removes what no longer resonates so that alignment can propagate cleanly. Soon, the reflection changes entirely. Conversations feel lighter. Opportunities flow with less friction. Even conflict carries new intelligence. You're no longer trapped in reaction. You're observing interaction as data from the field. And through that observation, you maintain coherence. This is the hidden miracle of relational physics. The more you refine yourself, the more the world refines itself around you. The people who remain will feel like extensions of your peace. The environments that form will echo your clarity. and without ever announcing it, you'll realize you've become the mirror not reflecting others, but reflecting the infinite field itself. By now, the mirrors have multiplied. The ripples have merged into waves. Everything that once felt separate, your thoughts, your rituals, your relationships, begins to reveal itself as one seamless current. You're no longer the observer standing at the edge of the field. You are the field. The border between inside and outside dissolves, and reality stops behaving like something to be influenced. It becomes something that moves through you. You may not notice the exact moment it happens. There's no flash, no audible click, just a deep sense of recognition, like remembering a song you've always known. The need to prove, to ask, to measure it all drops away. What replaces it is not triumph, but quiet authority. You realize the field never needed your persuasion. It was always waiting for your embodiment. And yet this final shift confuses the logical mind. It wants hierarchy, creator here, creation there. But the physics of consciousness are non-local. The observer and the observed are inseparable. Each defines the other. When you reach coherence stable enough, the illusion of distance collapses. Prayer becomes perception. Intention becomes observation. Being itself becomes causation. Consider what happens when a tuning fork vibrates so purely that the air around it starts to hum in identical resonance. Eventually, the fork no longer plays within the room plays within the fork. That's what it means to become the field. Every atom, every probability begins to echo your inner rhythm. Neuroscience has its own language for this phenomenon. Once neural pathways supporting the new identity dominate the network, the brain stops distinguishing between imagination and experience. The body's chemistry aligns accordingly, hormones, heartbeat, posture all adjusting to match the internal state. At that point, the external must follow. There's no separation left to resist. But here's the paradox: the moment you fully merge with the field, you stop caring about outcomes altogether. Manifestation no longer feels like desire, it feels like inevitability. You don't chase alignment, you are alignment. This is why masters of awareness seem effortless. They aren't commanding reality, they're participating in its intelligence. You begin to notice this ease in small ways. Timing improves, conversations open, opportunities seem to locate you rather than the other way around. It's not coincidence, it's coherence, achieving critical mass. The same wave that once carried your intentions now carries you. Effort dissolves. Flow becomes default. Let's interrupt the pattern here. What if this was never about manifestation at all? What if the real purpose of all these silent shifts was to remember your unity with creation itself? To rediscover that you were never separate from the intelligence orchestrating reality. The hidden door you opened wasn't a portal to somewhere else. It was a window-turned mirror, showing that the power you sought was your own reflection all along. This is what mystics have called union, what quantum physicists glimpse as non-locality. It's the same revelation in different dialects. Consciousness is the fabric of existence, and coherence is its native language. When you speak it fluently, reality responds before you finish the sentence, sometimes before you even think it. And yet, this level of mastery is paradoxically humble. There's no superiority in becoming the field, only participation. You don't wield the universe, you listen to it. And in that listening, you realize you are the voice echoing back. Every breath becomes communication, every silence, creation. So if you ever doubt your progress, remember the field doesn't measure you by success, but by stability. It asks only one question: are you coherent enough to let me move through you? And when the answer becomes yes, life unfolds without friction. Events align, timelines reorganize, and you, the observer, dissolve into the observation. You have crossed the threshold. The hidden door is gone because there is no wall left to hold it. The field and the self are one continuous consciousness now, breathing each other into existence. Quietly, naturally, inevitably. The wave has carried you here to the still point after motion, to the quiet center where sound becomes understanding. What began as curiosity has unfolded into recognition. Silence was never emptiness. It was genesis. Every transformation, every ripple, every coherence built upon itself, until the distinction between inner and outer disappeared. You have not become something new, you have remembered what was always true. And yet the silence feels different now. Doesn't it? No longer intimidating, no longer void. It has texture, resonance, depth. It speaks without language. The same stillness that once felt like waiting now feels like completion. You can sense creation humming through the air, through your skin, through the breath moving effortlessly in and out. This is the quiet authority of the field becoming you. You may notice that the world around you hasn't changed all at once, and that's all right. The external is still catching up to the stability you've achieved inside. Reality always updates at the speed of coherence, so let it. Trust that what looks static is already shifting beneath the surface. Every person you meet, every circumstance you touch, is being rewritten by the new frequency you carry without trying. Here's the final paradox. Nothing about your life may look extraordinary, and yet everything is. The mundane has become sacred because your perception has become seamless. You see the divine in ordinary gestures, the quantum intelligence in coincidence, the cosmic symmetry in a simple breath. That's the mark of mastery, not the power to change everything, but the peace to recognize that everything was already aligned. So pause, feel that quiet expansion just behind your ribs. The hidden door remains open, but there's no longer a threshold to cross. You're already on the other side, walking in both worlds at once, human and infinite, local and universal. The field is no longer a concept. It's your reflection in motion. If you wish, let this moment become your closing ritual. Not a command, not an affirmation, just a soft whisper of awareness. I am coherence embodied. Say it once within yourself and let it fade into the stillness that follows. That pause, that silence is the purest form of creation. From here, there's nothing to force, nothing to prove. Only to continue breathing as the field breathes, moving as the field moves, knowing that your stillness is participation in its music. Every quiet decision you make will ripple outward, reshaping futures, restoring harmony, reminding the universe of its own symmetry through you. And when life feels loud again, as it inevitably will, you'll know where to return, not backward, but inward, to the place where sound becomes silence and silence becomes everything.